Yeah, welcome to episode 2 of IMMLight. Thank you, LJ, for joining me. How's your day going so far?
It's been going great. Will, how about you?
Busy, 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 but we're so glad and so blessed to be able to make space today and to have a conversation with someone I think you're going to all really enjoy talking to. But before we begin, we want to acknowledge the territories that we're on. So maybe I'll pass it to you, LJ, to start, and then I will acknowledge on my end as well.
I'd like to acknowledge that we are located in the traditional territories of the Mississaugas of the New Credit First Nations.
I'd also like to recognize that my firm and myself are currently in Burnaby, British Columbia, home to the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh and Kakaya nations. And we are grateful for these communities for stewarding the lands since time immemorial and are very cognizant of our role as settlers as we have conversations about immigration and how they impact Indigenous communities and Canada writ large. We wanted to also recognize our preferred pronouns. I know we didn't do this on the first episode, but this is very important, especially in the light and in the context of conversations we're having across the nation. It's central to our identities. I go by the pronouns he, him.
I go by the pronouns he, him.
We also want to give a quick disclaimer, and I've seen this on some podcasts, so we should probably do it as well. In the event that we get into the realm of legal information, remember that this is legal information only. And nothing that we discuss on this podcast should be purported or taken as legal advice. We got to make sure that our regulators are happy on both sides of our various provinces.
And if you have legal questions, do seek proper counsel from an immigration lawyer or an immigration consultant.
Absolutely. So this episode, we wanted to delve into the largely underappreciated realm of family sponsorship. LJ, why is this so important right now?
It's important because family is central to a lot of Canadians. A lot of people are currently being separated by thousands and thousands of miles, thousands of kilometers, not of their own fault, largely because of the pandemic. Let's face it, international travel is very hard right now. The borders are very, very much rigid. It's hard to travel, even to our close neighbors, such as the US or Mexico. It's really quite the ordeal to actually just leave, and coming back is a whole different thing. So, when it comes to families being together, a lot of them are separated by different time zones, different countries, different borders. And the delays that are caused by the current pandemic are essentially points of anxiety for a lot of Canadian families.
Absolutely. And especially for overseas applicants for family sponsorship, the family class. Visa offices across the world were hit heavily by the pandemic, but it's also raised a lot of questions about whether Canada is prioritizing appropriately families and family reunification, and why is it taking so long for some of these applications to be processed overseas. That's why I am very excited to bring our guest today, Mohammed Majid. Mohammed Majid, I call him Majid, is a very important person, but more importantly, he's personally going through and experiencing the spousal sponsorship delays. He himself was an immigrant to Canada, immigrated to Canada in December 2017, but now he is awaiting a family sponsorship application and has been separated from his spouse and his son, a newborn son, for quite a while now because of the COVID-19 pandemic and because of delayed processing times. I recently had a chat with him over bubble tea, apparently his first bubble tea ever. And when I was listening to him tell us stories of his hometown, of his journeys across different countries, working, why he chose Canada, falling in love with a wonderful individual and spouse, and now becoming a father, I couldn't help but want to bring him onto the show. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce Majid. Welcome to the show, Majid, and thank you so much for taking time to share what has been a difficult journey.
Thanks for having me, Bill and LJ.
Awesome. So, Majid, we wanted to begin, and we want to center and focus this on your family, but you also have an incredible journey of how you got to Canada and some of the experiences of even just your early years prior to the decision to immigrate to Canada. Can you tell me a bit about what led you to Canada, some of the experiences abroad in different countries, and what ultimately made you stay here as the country of your choice?
Sure. So I came to Canada in 2017 of December. I think that was the year wherein the highest number of draws in Express Entry were ever made. And I was one of the beneficiaries of that. So who immigrated without a master's degree with just a high IELTS score. So I graduated in 2012 with an engineering degree, and I started working right after university. So I was working for one of the big four accounting firms in the risk advisory team. And I didn't really enjoy working there. So I moved. I changed jobs. I tried my hand at different professions. And eventually I reached a saturation point wherein it was too early in my career, but still I always wanted to become an entrepreneur, but I didn't really have the courage to start something. I was just looking into options. But in 2015, I quit my job. I wanted to take a sabbatical and take the GMAT and eventually do a master's in Europe, Canada, or the US. But I didn't take the test, and one of the reasons was the education is ridiculously expensive. And LJ made that comment in your previous podcast as well, how universities rely on international students for the money, right? So I couldn't afford, didn't really took the GMAT, went back into working again. And around that time, I was in touch with a friend, an ex-colleague from my previous company who was living in Vancouver here. And he kept on pushing me. He said, you know, if you want to stay employed, come to Canada. At least the wages are better than India. But going back to the same thing, right? When the CEC went draws, you guys said that lawyers usually don't encourage people getting into the pool with low scores, right? So I was not getting into the pool because the scores were higher, and I didn't have a master's degree. But he forced me. So because he kept on pushing me, I took the test. I took the IELTS test, and I got that 7.877 or whatever the score that's needed to get a high score. So I got that, but I didn't get into the pool. And all of a sudden, the score dropped to, I think, 416 or 415, and everybody started getting into the pool then. And then I decided, you know what, let me give it a shot. And when I started working on my application, what I did, I don't know if you guys know, but there is this big stereotype in the US and Canada regarding brown folks, especially people from India, that they are good with computers, right? So I wanted to capitalize on this because even though I was interested in entrepreneurship and business, but I knew if I had to settle down in Canada, I had to get back to technology. So that is when I went back. I started doing data analytics again. And I was lucky to get a job again in one of the big four, but an Indian firm. I was working for a US firm in India, but now I was working in an Indian firm. I got the job, and I was mentally prepared for the processing to last more than 6 months. But guess what? They processed within 55 days from my submission. And my friend's application was processed in 28 days. And so that is how I got the PR, and I knew there would be struggle here in Canada. And I was 25 then when I got the PR, and I said, you know what, it's easy struggling at 25 than at 29 or 30 when if I'm married and have kids. Mm-hmm. So yeah, that is how I came here. But yeah, do you want me to keep going, or do you have any questions?
Sorry, we were just listening. I think this is awesome. Part of our podcast is to give space and just for us to listen. I think sometimes, heads do a little too much talking, and we're here to listen to your story and just think about it. And I'm immediately drawn back to the days of quick express entry. LJ, do you remember? I don't know, were you practicing during that time when express entry was?
No, not at all, but actually very closely monitoring it. I was still articling when he got his ITA, I would imagine.
So much time has definitely flown by. Majid, before Canada, I understand that you also had experiences in many different countries other than India. And I think just a lot of viewers and listeners who might misconceive immigration think that this is the story always of one person from one area who spent their whole life there, who only has one option, which is Canada, and that's all they've ever wanted and chosen. You've had a bit more of a different journey. Can you maybe give a little bit of light into some of those early days, and even the choice again, like between different countries? What made you choose ultimately that this was
so when I quit my job to take the GMAT, I went on a holiday to Dubai, and there was a friend of mine who had a business there in Dubai, and so he offered me work, but he never sent the visa. So he offered me work. There were hugs and parties, but there was no the visa never came. And all of my friends told me that the visa would normally take a few days, a work permit in Dubai. But I just kept waiting, and eventually my friend apologized, so Dubai didn't happen as well, and I didn't really want to go back. Didn't want to go back to Dubai because, as I said, I was trying to find work in business area, not in technology. And besides that, Australia was an option, but I didn't really explore it because as I said, when Canada had its doors open in 2017, I didn't really have to look at Australia. And I think Australia also had that 7 years of same work stream. I didn't exactly study that, but I was kind of not eligible for that. I had to wait if I wanted to go to Australia. Yeah. So yeah, and as I said, Canada had its doors open, because it was profile-based core. Everything was pretty straightforward, just your degree, language, and work experience. And I had all of them. And yeah, and because it's close to the US, so I knew technology jobs would be aplenty here. But yeah, and back then I wanted to use Canada as a backdoor entry to the US, but not anymore. I don't think I'm planning on moving to the US anytime soon. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. It's great to hear your story, because I think many times people also misunderstand the sponsors, and that's the next part of the story we're going to get to, that the sponsors themselves often have journeys to Canada or in the diaspora communities that have led them to the position of sponsoring someone from another country and to Canada as a permanent resident.
Okay, I guess it's my turn. So Majid, maybe, can you tell us a little bit about your love story, essentially, how you met your D1?
Sure, yeah. So when I moved to Canada in 2017, besides hustling for work, I was trying to get married as well. I had started that in India, trying to find a spouse the way that I don't know about the whole country, but for my family, it's usually you either speak to a matchmaker or you create a profile on online matrimonial websites like Shadi.com or similar sites. So I had started this in India, but the moment this immigration thing happened, one of my friends advised that, I wait, go to Canada, settle down, and then get married. In retrospect, that was not a good advice, but anyway, so I moved here, and I as I said, I was hustling for the job, and I was also trying to get married. And the way I was interacting with the local community here was through the mosque here at Burnaby. And it was really difficult to get any prospects because in Islam we don't approach women directly, right? So it's either through a family or through an elder. And so I was not there was not much progress here through the mosque or through friends here. And then because I was online, then I was speaking to the imam at the Burnaby Mosque, and I just told him that, hey, I'm struggling, and I told him that about these websites that I'm trying to find a spouse in, and then he suggested that why don't you try this American Muslim matrimonial site, which is exclusively for Muslim people. I was already on 2 other websites for Muslim people, but there was no progress there. But he suggested this one, and I wanted to take his advice. And I put my profile up there, and I was contacting people, the members on that forum, and so first, when I started in my head, I'm like, oh, I'll marry either in Canada or in India, right? And then when I was going through these websites, which are basically open for anybody in the world, right? Then I slowly started expanding, the list of countries that I'm okay marrying in. And then eventually, so another reason for this was that in my head, I have to fill the same sponsorship application if I'm marrying somebody in the US or somebody in South America or somebody in China or anywhere. So this was going through my head. Maybe country-specific documents might be different, but 80% or 90% of the application is the same. So I shouldn't just discard an interest or shouldn't show interest only because somebody is from an X country, right? So then I saw my wife's profile on that site, and I just sent her a message, just initiating contact, saying that I'm interested in her profile, want to get to know her. If she has an elder, I can speak, and maybe we can talk, right? And so my brother lived in. So my wife's from Brazil, and my brother lived in Brazil for 1.5 years. So even though my brother and my wife never had any contact, my brother's family or my wife's family, but I knew what the city is like, and I knew a little bit about the culture and the Muslim community there. So I had a conversation with my wife's friend's husband, who was like an elder between us, and I had a conversation, and then so my background is in analytics, and even now I work as a systems analyst. So I had this huge list of, okay, these are the characters that I'm looking for. These are the characters that I'm okay compromising in. And when I was speaking to my wife, her name is Anna, and everything matched. Everything ticked off. And then I took some time, and I was on a pilgrimage. Then I was in Mecca, and I just kept asking myself, do I have any reason to say no besides immigration complications, which I'm okay dealing with? So yeah, then I said, you know what? I told the elder who was moderating the conversations. I sent him a proposal that, you know what, I'm okay. This happened. So I'm just summarizing everything that we did in 4 months to just a few minutes. So it took 4 months for me to decide. And the initial plan was for me to travel to Brazil, meet the family, meet her in person, and then officially or formally propose, and then get married. But when I started looking into the paperwork to get married in Brazil, it was crazy. The bureaucracy, it was insane. Some of the certificates, even the consulate didn't know where can I get them from, And because I am still an Indian citizen, some of the documents had to come from India. When this was turning out to be a nightmare, I told my wife, let me just come and get married, and we can deal with the paperwork when it comes, because traveling to Brazil is expensive, and I was on a project wherein leaves were not easy to come by. So I landed in the morning in Sao Paulo. My wife and her father picked me up, and I got married the same evening. So this is my marriage story in brief. Yeah.
Love happens quick and unexpected.
Well, two things that struck me really is the transnational courtship, the nature of how, all of that has been translated to an online platform before COVID, mind you. And second point is that even at the very beginning, that you had the frame of an immigration, problem before you to essentially, frame your every step during the process of searching for the one. What are your thoughts on that, Will?
Yeah, I mean, I completely agree with you. And as someone who is sponsored before, it does come up, like, even, whether or not you are yourself private, but want to have a quick small ceremony, but because of immigration, you need to make sure you also have your evidence, have your letters, have your witnesses, have a little bit of a party. Like I had a similar experience. I got married actually the same year my late father passed away, and culturally, I'm not supposed to have a wedding in the first year after that happens, but I needed to be with my spouse, and I needed her to stay with me. So I had to, bend some cultural rules in a sense. And that's something that's really interesting to me too, because I think hearing from what Majid has shared with me, I hark back on, you know, the immigration context that we learn from the all the reading and writing on Muslim marriages is in the context of either a very traditional type process or, you know, talaq as a divorce mechanism, but we don't really get into the details. So I was just meant what I wanted to ask Majid about in this context was, what are some of the common misunderstandings that the public has about Muslim love and Muslim marriage? Because, you know, for example, here we've become so accustomed to individuals meeting on Tinder and dating and marrying, and that seems all normal in the North American context. But I think many people don't understand the real details of some of these relationships. For you, is it considered a complication, or is this, if you know, how does faith play a role in love and marriage for you?
So in Islamic faith, so I'm not an Islamic scholar, so some of my comments might not be factually correct, but I'll give it a shot from what I understand. So in Islamic faith, we don't there's no dating. I mean, this everybody knows, right? There's no so for me, it was not an option to just go approach somebody or meet on apps, as you said. That was not an option at all. So if for me, I mean, especially because I was on a website like this, which is open to everybody, and you don't know if the person on that website is serious or not, right? You see that all the time on such forums. So for me, because I was on this for a few months, so I knew how to filter. By knew how to filter, I mean just ask if your parents are aware of this, or just check if they really are looking for a spouse, or looking for somebody to just take them to a different country, you know, because these I was doing all of this. That's why when I sent a message to somebody on that, so I always had this formal text prepared wherein I say, hey, I went through your profile, and these are the things that I like, and these are the things that I think will make us compatible. Is it possible to speak to your father, or if it's a non-Muslim, I mean, not non-Muslim, but somebody who reverted to Islam, who was a convert. So just ask if I can speak to somebody from their side, and so that we can get started. So as I said, this happens in an online setting, but offline, it's usually there's always somebody moderating the conversation. It's not that men and women don't speak with each other before marriage. It's just that it's pretty formal, and it's always, as I said, there's always a third person when they speak with each other. So this is how it is. And for me, it was fine, because for me that shows the seriousness of the person, right? So because I've seen friends speaking with say a woman who initially showed interest but afterwards just backed out, and I saw one of them go into depression as well, maybe not serious, but still he so I wanted to avoid all of this. So this is how usually say a Muslim marriage in which parents are not finding a match happens, especially in the friend circle I know. So I sent a proposal to the elder, and the girl is free to make a choice, so she can decline or she can accept. It's not because anybody can make a decision on her behalf. It's only after, so she gets to decide whether she wants to accept the proposal that she's.
So Majid, this is fascinating, and I think it's super important for our decision makers and frankly, even us as lawyers and those in community to spend more time understanding how things work in the various communities that we serve, and not necessarily just impose our Western standards of normality on others. And that's great to, I mean, the story that you had and you getting married, I think in many Western decision makers' eyes, or even in my own eyes, if I were to find a spouse, I'd find that absolutely terrifying. But for you, that's norm, and if it was any other way, that would be terrifying. No.
Yeah, because I'm not the first guy who got married by meeting somebody online, right? So even so, when I got married, and when I told my colleagues that I got married, and one of my colleagues joked saying it took me 10 years 10 years to, finally decide that I want to marry my girlfriend. And no, I mean, no, I expected shock from them, but nobody was shocked. Everybody was pretty happy. And as I said, people, even though they know somebody for years together, they're still not sure. And I mean, that is what marriage is, right? You just go into it, and then I got this all from my friends who I was checking in when I was speaking with Anna, and so yeah.
Okay, Majid, thank you for sharing that. That's really fascinating. And like Will, I'm always in awe in hearing stories about how people meet. And more or less, I'm not sure if I said it the last time during the first podcast, my background is in sociology. I have a particular taste in global sociology and like the sociology of various cultures, essentially, and the globalization of these things. One of the things that actually I come across in my practice is the variations and the permutations of how marriage is actually seen by societies writ large. You're coming in from India. Could you tell us more about the misconceptions, from a Western standpoint, if I may, of marriages in India?
So, I mean, in India's pretty diverse. We have plenty of cultures. The South, even in the South, it's not the same across the whole of South India. So, one common misconception that I see, especially in the West, the stereotype is that, Indians marry strangers through arranged marriages, which is not true. I mean, of course, it's not true, but I mean, it's usually, as I said, there are too many people involved in getting two people together in India. And no matter, even my roommate, my ex-roommate, he got married through the portal shadi.com. And even though his family found the girl on the website, but still the whole family went and met the girl's family, got the background information, and then the decision was made, say, in a few months. So it's a process, it's not that just you meet. I mean, that's how they show in the movies, right? You just go to somebody's house and then you give a thumbs up and it's marriage. It's not like that. But I don't know if I'm answering your question, but it's.
I guess I'll put it to you more bluntly as well. In your opinion, like being a racialized brown man, like does going into immigration and sort of the history of Canada's immigration, does it weigh on your mind? Does it weigh on your mind the elements of culture and race that underpin this area and submitting a sponsorship?
So, I mean, I didn't know this until I filed my wife's application. As I said, now I was naive to decide for myself that only because the application is same, the immigration would look at all applications the same way, because this was the thing in my head, right? Because I have to fill the same application for a spouse from any country outside Canada. But only when I started working on the application and I had the package ready, and I was checking on forums, and I was reading about people's experiences, that is when I should say my mind was blown. And that is when I decided to enroll into this course, because UBC gives me a benefit of something called as tuition waivers, wherein I can do courses offered by UBC or by UBC Extended Learning, 12 credits or an equivalent dollar amount. So there was this certificate in immigration course. So I submitted an application to get into that course while working on my wife's application, just to understand how this whole thing works. And because as I said, my background is analytics, I didn't miss any part in the application. So from the first message that I sent to my wife to the last message we exchanged, I documented everything. The emails that I wrote to the Brazilian consulate asking for documents about marriage, or the profiles from that website, the conversations from that website. I documented everything. But when I started reading about people's experiences, especially people from Africa and South America, how applications are being looked at differently, that how, so it broke my heart. But as I said, but this was, so when I submitted my wife's application, I told her that, you know what, in worst case, they might call you for an interview to check if the marriage is genuine. And you can just, you be yourself, give the interview. And I have this attitude, you know, what's the worst that can happen, right? They can just reject the application, right? And you can either appeal, and even if your appeal gets, say rejected, I can always leave the country, right? It's not that I'm stuck here, right? I didn't come in as a refugee. I came in as a skilled immigrant, and I can find work anywhere, right? So this was my attitude when I submitted the application. So the reason the immigration broke me, or it didn't break me yet, but it's about to break me, is because they sit on the application without any progress for a long time, right? So it's 17 months. And they haven't touched the application since they sent a medical request last July. So this is what I was not prepared for. So if they reject TRV, I was okay for a judicial review. I would have reached out to you, Will, for that. But again, they haven't touched the TRV application at all, 5 months, and now 17 months. So I'm at a stage wherein I'll be eligible to apply for citizenship in a few months. Now I'm not so sure, you know, I might not, but as I said, this whole experience, yeah, I'm sorry, this is difficult for me, but it's all good though. Yeah,
this is raw, and that's, you know, I don't have, and I shouldn't do a direct comparison, because when I was an articling student, I tried to sponsor I try to get a TRV for my then partner, and that was rejected the first time. I had one of the best immigration lawyers in Canada working on that application, but it was refused because my mother's bank statement didn't have her full name on it. It had an initial and last name, and therefore they didn't accept that that was actually her, and therefore they didn't accept that there were sufficient funds. And in that decision, they called my then partner young, single, and mobile, which for anybody who's in love and trying to, you know, hone that relationship, calling someone young, single, mobile can be very, very frustrating. So in my situation, I ended up with just 9 months of separation, but those 9 months were hard. And I can't imagine now, in your case, the 17 months, I mean, that's not even counting the time that you were separated before you probably submit your application. But what is life like? I think people don't understand, what is life like trying to do an entirely virtual relationship, and now with a son, as you mentioned in your introduction.
Yeah. So I did. So in my head, so when I was supposed to travel last year in April, I had my vacation booked, my tickets booked, but the flights were canceled and I couldn't travel. But it was getting too much for me, you know, because my wife was pregnant, and she lives alone. Her father lives in the same city but at a different place. Her parents are separated, so her mom lives in Rio, and she has a sister, but her brother-in-law was said that he was immunocompromised, and nobody knew what COVID can do, right? So everybody was being careful. So she was there, pregnant, delivery in a few months, living alone, and her neighbor is a senior citizen. So I was finding it very difficult to work, and I traveled for my wife's delivery, and I was there at my son's birth, and then I came back, and virtually, I don't know. It's not easy, but technology makes it a little easier. But it's a lot of time and energy, right? And there are always the problem that I find with long distance communication is the misunderstanding. When somebody misses a message or somebody misses a phone call, it unnecessarily people start overthinking, and that creates an issue. But for me, the biggest challenge right now, I think more than the long distance, it's my son growing up without me, right? So I'm missing all this moment. So he took his first sip of water last week, and he took a first bite of food, and he's trying to crawl. So these are the moments that I'm missing. But yeah, I'm sure you read about Brazil, right? The variant is creating a havoc in Brazil. So I'm glad that they're safe. And what made it challenging was she cannot afford to quit her job, right? Because it's difficult for me to support two houses, and she's working. Initially, they said she has to report back to work after her maternity leave. And that is when I wrote to the Council General in Sao Paulo. So I put the immigration minister, the Council General in Sao Paulo, where her so I didn't put the Council General in Sao Paulo. I just put the Council General of Mexico and the immigration minister. I sent them an email saying that my wife has to go back to work after maternity, and her father, who's a senior citizen, her neighbor, who's a senior citizen, are all part of our bubble. If she goes out, and she works in the pharmacy industry, so she has to meet doctors to sell her medicines, whatever, right? So I said, you guys are putting her at risk, and if she catches COVID, her father and her neighbor can potentially die, right? And I'm very grateful to the Council General in Mexico. He immediately responded, and he looped in the Council General in Sao Paulo. And she forwarded my email. She said she'll check in with the immigration section. But after that, there hasn't been any progress on the visa application. And we did get a acknowledgement that we are exempt from the email that you sent, right? Saying that you're exempt from travel. After you submit a TRV application, you're supposed to write to another email saying that you are exempt. So the one good thing that happened from all this is that we received that acknowledgement in January, but there hasn't been any progress since then.
So did you do the TRV to try and reunite? Is
that...
Yeah. Okay, yep. But that also is still in progress, even with your circumstances.
Yeah. Yes.
Wow. That's painful, LJ. I mean, as someone who's about to become a father and thinking about even right now before the child is born, the many steps, I want to be there for every second, right? Like
exactly, right? Yeah.
I have similarly situated clients, unfortunately, who have to deal with separation. But in Majid's case, it's actually interesting, and he touched on a topic about having to maintain two households, having to do global householding, being a father remotely, and having to care for them, having to think about their welfare, thousands and thousands of kilometers away. It's the amount of anxiety that creates on a person. So I can't even imagine how this would be, for someone who's in a situation such as Majid, or people who are waiting for even longer, because Majid's outlandish. It's already outlandish as 17 months, but I've heard longer stories, and Majid did touch on that earlier. So I can't even imagine what kind of like emotional, psychological, and mental stress that they have to live through. That sort of like, brings us to a segue, because he did touch on something. It does appear that he is exempt from travel restrictions, but it does appear that his TRV is not moving. Any take on that, Will?
Well, that's where the government apparently indicated in updated dual intention instructions that they were supposed to help applicants, at least on paper, but in practice, I've heard the same stories as Majid, that if you're applying from certain countries, or if your application is one of the ones that's stuck in the process right now, they're not going to give that visa very easily, right? And that's what we've seen as well. I was going to ask that question as well, Majid. It's like, we appear to have a two-tiered system, one with individuals who require visas like your spouse, and then others for individuals who are from countries where you can get an ETA or get an exemption quickly and be here in a couple of weeks, possibly, once that's finalized. What do you think of that system, being someone who's in the midst of it right now? Like, do you have thoughts, and how would you change that?
So here's what happened. So my naivety was not exclusively on the sponsorship application. So when I proposed, when I sent in a proposal, my wife accepted, and we were going to get married in a few months. My wife said, you know what, let me apply for an American visa. because Brazilians go to Miami a lot on a holiday, right? So she said, you know what, let me apply for an American visa. And if you're a Brazilian, if you have an American visa, all you need is an ETA to come to Canada, right?
Yep.
And you know what I said? Don't do that, because apply for a visa only if you have to travel to the US. You're not traveling to the US, so let's not do that, because when you come to Canada, the border is very close from here, right? So, and my brother lives in Seattle. So I put down that proposal. I said, you know what, don't apply for the American visa, just wait. The immigration should happen, or at least we'll apply for a Canadian TRV, right? And so when I started reading about how other countries are doing it, and I've seen that they have an exemption, for spouses or fiancés or people who are in real common law relationship, right? But I think Canada did have that, but they didn't closed it. But I don't know in general. I don't have a comment in general on say visa versus no visa, but for families, because that is what I'm concerned about at this point. So for families, I think there should be an exception, because I mean, of course, there's fraud in every immigration stream, right? Not only family sponsorship, but it's just that this has been singled out, and everybody who gets married is looked at as a is guilty, right? Everybody's submitting application just to prove that the real marriage is real, right? But yeah, I think for families, there should be some sort of an exception, I think that is what the first one of that was the first proposal from the advocacy groups, right? Give a special TRV for families. And I find it funny that they didn't even acknowledge it. I haven't heard in any statements that they are even planning to do something about it.
That's right. Yeah, in fact, back in the summer of 2020, if Will, if you recall, Jenny Kwan, the NDP shadow minister for immigration, wrote to our immigration minister, Marco Mendicino, asking about the delays in the TRV applications, especially for those who are trying to reunite with their families in Canada. And in that letter, she actually dealt with 179B, Section 179B of the regulations. And for those who are not in the know, 179B is that section in the regulations that talk about, being in Canada and leaving at the end of your period of authorized stay. Will, do you want to talk about, possible policy interventions in regards to that?
Yeah, absolutely. Actually, I think this will make a really good segue to our next portion. So I think we will, I want to ask one more question, and then I think we're going to go to our policy ponder party segment to talk about that. Of course, less so a party today after hearing Majid's quite heavy story.
Yeah.
And, Majid, our thoughts are with your family, and we hope that they are here soon so we can go get some bubble tea in the neighborhood.
Sure, yeah.
It's like 10 minutes away from me. Which is awesome. I'm glad to have a neighbor like Majid in the community. So the one question I want to finalize on, maybe before we head to our policy discussion portion, is that of organizing, because I think one of the biggest challenges of being in the process of immigration is that feeling of being handcuffed, unable to really speak out against this process for fear that your application may get some repercussion, or that someone's listening or watching and might, make an issue with your own immigration matters, or, even in your employer, whether they are watching. And all of that adds a lot of stress. But I think one thing we have seen through COVID, which has been really amazing, is that individuals who have been affected are finally saying, you know what? I want to speak out because I can't have this injustice happen to my family or my loved ones. And I'm willing to put my voice out there. And Majid, I know you're doing the same thing by coming on our show and sharing your story in a very personal way. But can you talk a bit about some of the efforts that have been ongoing in the community, in the migrant communities? I've seen a lot of, especially women of color, Black, Indigenous women, various different communities step up during this time to call out the government on racial injustice, and specifically the way that migrant communities have been treated during COVID.
Yeah, so the first time I came across advocacy was Jennifer's petition at change.org. I think she created for her husband, and That is how I came across a Facebook group, because I was looking for because I wasn't I was sure that I wasn't the only one who was affected by this or was going to get affected by this. I came across Jen's petition, and I joined the group, but my contribution to the advocacy has been nil, and I didn't contribute much, even though I was part of the initial discussions, just as a member, but there was no contribution from my end. But recently, last month, I said, you know what, because all the advocacy groups are focused on reuniting families, because that's the primary purpose, right? Then you know, I told myself, you know what, let's fix the system, because okay, if I advocate, maybe my application will go in quickly, right? But what about the community members? Because I mean, Canadians or permanent residents or anybody who's in Canada is free to marry whoever they want, right? Within Canada or outside, and they will continue to get into relationships with people in Canada or abroad. So I was pretty sure that this will be an ongoing thing. Then I started to, I want, I wouldn't say I wanted, I want to have, say, more on fixing this whole process, because some of the questions that were asked in the sponsorship application are pretty medieval. You know, it's like I mean, for example, one of the questions that was like, oh, if your parents didn't attend your wedding, please explain, right? I mean, why should I explain? I mean, I'm 27 years old, right? So why should I explain if my mom or my dad are not attending my wedding? And it's funny, they ask for that explanation and many other questions which don't make sense in 21st century. So even, I mean, those were the details. But before that, you know what I said? I thought start with shifting to online application.
Yes.
So the reason I put that whole advocacy thing, I put out a tweet asking for organizers. People approached me, but there was this one lady who said she'd like to volunteer, but she said because she's separated from her husband, it's very difficult for her to focus on these things. She promised, she said, the day my husband is here, I'll join your effort. And that really touched me, because I'm in the same place, you know, wherein I want to go all out on, say, fixing this family sponsorship application, you know, as a group, not as an individual. But then I thought, as I said, my son is growing up without me and my wife's not here. And it's 17 months, and people have already started speaking in our friends and relatives. Why does it take 17 months, right? But then, you know, I kind of paused on that, but I might eventually get to that, you know, even say when my wife is here, or even before that. It's just that I need some space now. I need some peace of mind, because advocacy would involve reaching out to members of parliament, being on the social media, or just I'm not ready for that right now. But I would eventually, for sure, you know, work on this. As I said, the starting points just to get that online applications. So in my head, even if a single person suffers, the procedure has to be, I mean, the process has to be fixed. Because it's funny, I mean, a trigger warning for people who are listening, but you know what I was thinking this morning? I said, because I live on the 9th floor and I'm perfectly okay mentally and everything, but I was thinking, oh, maybe it will take somebody to harm themselves for the immigration system to change. You know, that's how things operate in the government, right? And I felt so bad at that thought. Why am then, you know, I apologize, but this is what was going through my head, that, you know, somebody has to hurt themselves, because people have admitted openly that they're calling suicide helplines. And I can understand, you know, I can understand where they're coming from. But this is what I was thinking, that it will take, say, somebody to harm themselves. That is when the opposition will come in. That is when the public sentiment will be triggered. And that is when the immigration will finally acknowledge what separating families will do. Wow. So, yeah.
Thanks for sharing that, Majid. And you know, I see you and feel you, and I call out on our profession as well, LJ. Like, I'm going to ask you, LJ, to share your experiences now as well, just so we can all, you know, share that we have these stories in our own families as well. It's our friends. We ourselves are sponsors. We ourselves are the sponsor. And too often, bureaucrats and individuals have been able to hide behind the safety of their homes and their families next to them without a care of what's going on to the families that are impacted by this. So LJ, maybe I'll ask you this question, like, tell me about your proximity to sponsorship and why this is so important to you.
Um, you know, my story will pale in comparison to what Majid and all our friends are going through right now. My heart aches and goes out to all those families who are separated by, not just by the pandemic, but, this has been a disaster that's been waiting to happen, to be honest with you, for not having digitized this process. It really speaks volumes as to, how much investment the government has made in terms of like modernizing the family class sponsorships and applications. But on a personal note, I did actually immigrate to Canada through the family class. Um, and it's sort of like, a nice segue to kind of like stand on the, I guess, like the soapbox in a way that for people who think that family sponsorship is a drag on the economy, it's not. There's a lot of people who actually come to Canada through the family sponsorship route who are actually active contributors to Canada directly. And indirectly, there's a lot of ways that, families that are reunited essentially have realized potentials in contributing to the economy. So there's a lot of things that are not accounted for in traditional economic and statistical senses that the government is not looking at. And perhaps, the silver lining, if I may, try to put a little bit of optimism into the whole problem right now, is that at least we have government's attention. And I really definitely hope that, it doesn't take someone to harm themselves, as Midget put it. It's a terrible thought. And I understand why it would come across your mind, Majid. But definitely, for people in a position to advocate for this, people in the profession such as yourselves, Will, such as myself, when I talk to people, I try to engage with them and tell them that, listen, we really need to make this system work better for the people who are actually trying to access services from the government like this.
Absolutely. And it starts just with simple steps, like acknowledge what's going on, create a
Right.
portal so applicants know what's going on in their application in a more accurate way, not your 75%, 100% ready bar, but nothing has happened bar. That's not good
Right.
enough. That's not good enough. I think that the communication has been a problem. The tone has been a problem. And this is something that we need to work on. And I think this is an incredible segue to our next segment, because we're going to really delve into some of the policy issues now and some of the recommendations we have. And we're going to ask Majid for some of his thoughts as well. He touched on some of them, moving the system more digital, but maybe we'll go into some more detail.